Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me here today. I'm from the Society. I have to say what an act to follow, following Derek and David. And I actually have links with both because I worked with Derek at Bradford. Derek was the clinical director and I was the head of midwifery. I absolutely learned lots from him. And I have to say he took me to my first big mega conference in London, speaking in front of an audience of about 250. It was really scary, but I learned lots then. And from then on it was onwards and upwards. I've been in that labour ward where he's unlocked those brakes and pushed that bed out the door, so I have been there. My link with David is he invited me he was the president on obstetric anaesthetists and invited me as a midwife from the RCN to join the Obstetric Anaesthetists Association, and I have to say I absolutely love that committee. I don't get there often, but when I do I learn so much, but I take so much back to the midwifery profession, so it's a two-way thing because we do it very well with obstetricians in the RCN and we do it very well with paediatricians and neonatologists, but there was a gap with obstetric anaesthetists, and it paid off this year when it was the £3 million HAFIT campaign, Safety at the Department of Health, when I was sitting judging with an RCOG consultant and Department of Health. When obstetric anaesthetist bids came through, I was flying the flag, saying go for it. There was the sim men, sim mums, there was video cameras for intubation, and they couldn't believe that a midwife was actually prioritising over midwifery and relaxing chairs, etc. for parents, that the obstetric anaesthetists should get the awards and the bids for the money. So that's my experience with obstetric anaesthetists, and I'll still fly the flag. So today I'm going to be talking about RCN's Better Births initiative, and it's an initiative, not a campaign, because there is a subtle difference. Campaigns are where we mither people, we lobby, we bend the government's ears, we bend the Department of Health's ears, etc. But when it's an initiative, we do sort of education, learning, gentle persuasion, shared practice, etc. So it's slightly different. And one of the things when you've got a good initiative, you've got to have a logo. And this is our Better Births logo at the RCN. And it's quite subtle in it. There's 3 loops. The pale blue here is about the continuum of antenatal care. The pale green in the middle is the intrapartum care, and it continues all the way through to the postpartum period. And it took quite a while to get that logo. We've done a lot of discussion, we talked to members, midwives, etc. But actually it's worked really well because it's a really positive symbol that it's a better births. It's not something that's negative, it's extremely positive. So it's working very well as the logo. So what's Better Births about? It's really difficult to see this. Well, it's something called a knowledge capture and utilisation project. So it's about gathering the evidence, gathering all the knowledge. It's about disseminating that knowledge, and it's actually about putting it into practice. So there's no point in having the evidence and quoting it without practicing it. And that's what we're not terribly good at as midwives, and probably the nursing profession as well. So that's the ethos of it. It's a 4-country initiative. And we're aiming at identifying good practice, but also exemplary practice and sharing that practice. It's about improving quality, it's about improving experience for women, but it's also about efficiency and effectiveness of maternity care. And as I said, the women's experience is part of it. The experience is important for women because they carry that birthing experience, as you know, all the way through life. The saying goodbye charity that I work with, at the services, we have 80-year-old women that turn up at that service and can tell you verbatim what actually happened at their birth. So it is about safety and healthy outcomes, but actually for women the experience is really important. And it's about the midwife as a key coordinator and lead professional in maternity care. And it's about small changes. And the good news about small changes are when you actually gather momentum and speed, the small changes suddenly become big changes and big improvements in care. And we have some resources for midwives and students to help them actually deliver on better births. So we've got 3 themes. Derek was right, I was going to talk about normality. But it's about the normality that the majority of women actually, when they birth, they have a normal birth experience. However, it's also about women with complex pregnancy, and that's the subtle difference between the RCM's normal birth campaign that we had for years. We're moving forward for a positive and normal birth experience for all women, high risk and so on. The second and third theme are about increasing access to midwife-led care, continuity of care in which which was high in the maternity review, and it's about reducing health inequalities. Just at this point, let me say that the maternity review was aptly named Better Bus. We had that title 18 months ago, and Baroness Cumberly stole it from us. We actually tried, Cathy Warwick was on the review team, and she actually tried to persuade her to change the name of it, but no, they absolutely insisted Better Bus was going to be the name of the title of the review document. So I think it's really important that we remember these three themes as we're trying to sort of deliver on the Better Bus initiative. So how do we do it? Well, we do lots of things. We do case studies, we look at good practice, we actually gather people together, we have focus groups, we have webinars, we actually have tweet chats. There's all sorts of things that we can do to sort of disseminate the work. We do projects. There's a couple of projects that I'm going to mention as we go along from the Design Council, and one about continuity of care. And this is all accessible to our members. It's also accessible to women. Some of the stuff's accessible to women out there by clicking on the Better Bus, rcm.org.uk. Now this slide is showing one of the projects that we've done. This is a map. We worked with a mapping team to actually map across the UK the national picture of women in fertility in terms of age 15 to 49, where they were across the country, so that we could actually see what was going on. Now on our website, this is live. It's real. You know, you click on it and you can hone in and you can actually get to the actual part. You can get to Yorkshire, you can get to Scotland, you can get to Northern Ireland and Wales. Now the darker that purple is, the actually more densely populated of women who are fertility age groups are. So it's really useful to get a picture across the country of where we are, and that took quite a bit of work to do with the mapping team. This is another picture that the mapping team done. So the red dots are obstetric units, and obstetric units with co-located midwife-led units. The blue ones are, the blues are with alongside. The green ones are freestanding, and there's a yellow dot there. And there's no yellow dots GP units in England, but actually way up in the north, in Shetland and Orkney, there's two GP-led units up there. So when you actually go onto the website and hone in on that, you can actually see where the GP units are, where FMUs are, etc. And there's other maps as well that shows the total population density, etc. So this kind of stuff is actually giving us a clear picture of where women are, what the density is like, what fertility is like, etc. And it's really helpful in terms of trying to sort of see what the national picture is. So that work is ongoing. So back to normality. It's not normality at all risks anymore. It's normality based on safety, healthy outcomes, but it's also about normalising care for all women. It's about the personalised maternity agenda, as was in the maternity review. It's about all the... Safer Child, the initiatives that we've got at the moment, Safer Childbirth, Spotlight on Maternity Care, Saving Babies' Lives. This is all part of Better Bus. It's all encompassing. Nice guidance, etc. is absolutely key. It's about the coordination of care by midwives, and the most important thing about Better Bus is the recognition that we're all in this together. It's multi-professional working, and that's with obviously obstetricians, anaesthetists, neonatologists, but it's also with the other agencies, it's with the charities, it's with social care, etc. We're all in it together for the better outcomes for mothers and their families. And again, it's about the positive birth experience for women, because that is really important to women when you listen to women's voices. Well, the continuity of care evidence has been growing and growing for some time, and there's been an awful lot of work done on this, and it was really pleasing to see that come out of the maternity review. But that's not without its challenges, of course. The benefits are obvious in terms of it's about a relationship between the woman and the midwife who is leading on the care. But the benefits of continuity speak for themselves. Reduction in the use of epidurals, fewer episiotomies, more chances of having a spontaneous vaginal delivery, and less likely to experience preterm birth, and increased satisfaction, and the benefits of that relationship whenever there's a difficult situation, a challenging situation, an emergency situation, if the midwife has got a really good relationship with the woman and the kinds of cases that we've just been hearing about, the chances are that the midwife and the woman will listen to the midwife in terms of the advice that she's going to give, as opposed to seeing someone for the first time in an emergency situation, not having a relationship and being really frightened and not able to make a decision. So it's really important that we think about continuity of carer in terms of services, in terms of policies, in terms of how we're taking things forward. There's a review going on in Scotland at this point in time, and Scotland's review, its newborns and maternity, are really looking closely and thumbing through our review in terms of how it's going to impact on their recommendations. And it's it's a four-country thing, so all the countries in the UK are really sort of signed up to continuity of care because of the evidence. Last week there was a joint RCOG statement on continuity of care and how multi-professional teams should work, and it was launched at last week's continuity of care conference where Baroness Cumberledge was there. It was a brilliant phrase in it. The teams that work together should actually train together. And I think people have been saying that for years, but now that we see it in the document itself, I think it's a recommendation that nobody has a problem with, but actually putting it into practice is the challenge. And of course, bearing in mind complex pregnancies too. So in terms of women's voices, these are real women that spoke at last week's continuity of care conference, and this is how important continuity of care was to them. To actually have a relationship perhaps in the antenatal period with a midwife, but actually go into an obstetric unit or a birth centre and not know the person at the most important time of their life can actually make a woman feel so stressed and so dreadful. Having to repeat it if there's no continuity in the antenatal period, repeating everything every time you see another midwife. This one was the really shock for me at the time of hearing the woman speak to say that she would actually rather free birth twice than have a stranger care for her. I mean, how do you deal with that as a midwife who actually knows the woman is going to free birth, and you can't do anything about it because you can't barge into the woman's home and say, you know, I'm going to come and birth your baby. So that's a real scary one, that this is how women sometimes feel and take an action on in terms of the importance of continuity of care if they don't get what they want. Inequalities, that's another key challenge for us with the Better Births initiative in terms of these are avoidable. That's the definition from the WHO Social Determinants of Health, about they are avoidable, and it's between groups of people within and between countries across the globe. And these are some of the outcomes in terms of inequalities. And I think the phrase down here, our life circumstances shouldn't dictate our health outcomes in the UK, but we all know that it does. We see it, we experience it, we work with the women who are from the vulnerable communities, the women whose first language is in English, the women who have got disabilities, the women who are BME backgrounds, etc. We know, and where they live actually has an impact on their health outcomes. So what Better Births is about in terms of trying to reduce health inequalities, it's about working with services, with heads of midwifery, with clinicians to try and tailor the services to actually meet the needs of the local population, which is why we're looking at the bigger picture in terms of the 4 UK countries. So if we get it right in a small part of the UK, we can then disseminate that good practice. It doesn't always transfer, definitely, you know, with remote and rural communities, but actually in the main, you know, suburban places and so on and so forth, you can actually disseminate and transfer some of that practice. And it's important that the care is high quality, that we're using our public health work, that we're doing our screening, etc., etc., and give women support specifically from sort of vulnerable communities. And the first 1001 critical days have been absolutely instrumental in taking forward services from a public health perspective. There's an APPG that started in 2015, is continuing to 2016, and it's about attachment theory, and it's about getting mums and babies better relationships from the vulnerable communities to make sure that future society obviously has is going to be better with a better start in life. So these are the people that we've worked with in terms of working with what we call the Design Council. We've worked with the Design Council to actually look at the environments where women birth. We've worked with women, we've worked with professionals to absolutely look at everything we possibly can, to observe, to see what we can do better, to listen to the professionals' views, but also to listen to the users' views. These are some of the views from the Design Council perspective that we came back. There's lots and lots of information that we've got, but just because of time, I'll just put a couple of slides up there. This was a midwife on a postnatal ward that was saying that verbal handovers, as well as written handovers, standing at the side of the bed, so that if we say something not quite right, the women can actually chip in and say, well, actually, that's not quite right. You know, it's really important that you know my viewpoint as well, and can also ask questions of the healthcare professionals. So this was about a transfer from the birth centre to the obstetric unit. And this was from an obstetrician, that it's not ideal. And then the transfer when the woman actually got to the obstetric unit, that there was no relationship with the midwife, no rapport. She felt very frightened, she felt very stressed, she felt very scared. The midwife didn't know her name, the woman was terrified. And then the woman who had been managing her labour extremely well, who had been in control, suddenly lost control and suddenly felt pain immensely because she felt out of control because of how things were transferred and how things had moved on. So these are all really important things when we're actually developing and improving services and trying to implement the Better Births initiative, that we bear in mind we need to listen to users and we need to listen to professionals as well. So these are some of the things that we're thinking about for the future, for moving forward in terms of the Better Births initiative. We're looking at preparing for the birth experience and thinking about the environment, working with the Design Council to think about triage, for example. We're looking at how the environment can actually be better, improved, so that it's a better experience for the women and their families. But I have to give you an anecdote of Worcester. When I was recently in Worcester, there's some absolutely beautiful mood lamps on the birth centre. And when I asked the midwives, how did you get the funding for these? They're absolutely amazing, they're gorgeous. And they started with a mood lamp in the high risk and high dependency unit. So the midwives started to queue up to work in HDU because they felt very relaxed. It was an intensive case, but complex pregnancy, but they felt very relaxed because the mood lamp in the background was not only calming for the woman who was having the care and a partner, but also for the midwives. So they then got a bid in and got some more monies and got them along the labour ward. And then when the birth centre was being prepared, they actually got a whole host of mood lamps. And so everybody in that particular unit are, not all the time, stress-free, but some of the time. And they felt that the organisers and the managers were actually listening to them in terms of, this is not only good for women, but it's good for us as well. Which brings us on to caring for staff is also part of Better Births and also part of the RCM's ethos. And we're actually starting a campaign about well-being for staff out in the NHS. So this is a watch this space. So the well-being of the staff is equally as important because they then give better care and outcomes are safer. And so to sort of read more about this is our website. This is how you can get a summary of some of the things that we're doing with the Design Council. We're actually doing some work in Yorkshire here with Lab for Living with Sheffield Hallam, and we're going to be looking at a development programme to use design approaches in maternity care. So that's just in the pipeline at the moment. There's other projects sort of in the pipeline that we are thinking about in terms of Better Births. But we do need some. The project, technically speaking, ends at the end of this year. However, we are putting in some bids for some more money to RCM to hopefully get some more Better Births initiatives on the go. So, in summary, what we're looking at is our teams out there gaining confidence, developing competencies, working together as a multi-professional team, using the evidence, measuring the impact, because all of this has to be measured to make sure that we're doing the right thing and we're getting the good outcomes. And the environment, working with Design Council to ensure that we are getting the environment right in terms of maternity care, and bearing in mind the inequalities and make sure that the care is equal for all. I'm happy to take any questions.